what it is. How's it going, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about Latin representation in media. We're going to talk about all the things. Talk about the use of language, people, all brown skins of varying shades and colors. Who knows what we're going to talk about? And we're going to have a special guest as well. So if you want to hear what we have to say, sit back, relax, tune on in, grab a snack, grab a beverage, and listen to The First Ones to Die. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the First Ones to Die podcast. It's a lovely day here at the station. If you're looking at the video right now, you might notice that it looks a lot different, and that's because we're all actually in person for once. Last time we did this, I think, was the Batman video,
Batman.
Right? So we're all in person, but it's because we also have a special guest with us as well. You will get to meet them in a bit. For those listening on the audio, I am Jerome, your constant host most of the time, if I'm not busy. And Jonathan, our other host, who often does the intros, is still in his sabbatical, out for a little bit, but he will be back. I believe he'll be back next one?
The following week.
Okay, so he'll be back the following week. So if you're all the Jonathan fans out there, just know that he will be back, just not right now. But stick around though. The other black guy's still here, so it's all right. But in the meantime, we still have Alex, who is here currently. Alex, how have you been?
Super. I'm finally over my cold, which is nice. That was annoying. But I'm good. Nothing too exciting this week as normal. I've just been working, editing, and going through our old videos, finding little clips and things to share with others. So
that's right. And if you want to see those clips, stop on over to our TikTok account, where you can see a lot of our highlights and clips from episodes past and episodes of the future sometimes too. Because you'll be putting up clips for stuff that isn't out yet.
Ahead, yeah.
But that's good because it gets the buzz going.
But I let them know that it's streaming not yet, so release date.
We have, as for those watching the video, you can see we have a guest with us. Do you want to introduce yourself or?
Suddenly the nerves are taking over.
You're all good.
Hello, my name is Monica. Armand or Moni. It really depends.
Do you have a preference to what we should call you, Monica?
No.
Moni?
Except for if someone calls me Moni and they don't say it correctly, I will force you to not call me Moni.
That's fair.
But no, people usually call me Mon or Monica. It doesn't really matter in a sense. No. Hello, I've never been on this side, so it's a little bit weird. I don't know how to respond or react.
So this is Monica. They have their own podcast called Cafe with Strangers.
Yeah,
if I said that correctly, where they interview people of Latin background who live in the Pacific Northwest. You have a few episodes out. We were talking to you about that, about how you kind of came up with the idea and.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about that now or later?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sure. I don't really remember how I came up with the topic other than it kind of just came up. Growing up, there were a lot of experiences that I had as a Latina that I felt like I was very alone in those experiences. And so I wanted to kind of talk to other people to share their stories, also in a way be able to not feel alone in a lot of different ways. And that's the very general gist of it. But I like to talk about people from what countries their family is from, where they're from, if they're directly coming from the States or not the States. Ignore that. And yeah, I like to talk based on education, mental health, sexuality, those things, just because I feel like it's not just taboo, but there's also the struggles that come with the being first gen as well, that I feel like we all know and experience, but we don't talk about it. And I feel like it helps to be able to talk about those things. And yeah, it's been an exciting journey, and I'm excited to continue this journey and be able to share other people's stories. As I've come going through this, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of amazing things to say that I feel like the world should hear. So it's an exciting thing.
Oh, that's a fun idea, and getting to talk to different people about their experience and stuff like that. That's always a fun way to get to know somebody too. And yeah, and being a first generation like myself, um, you don't realize how different things are until you actually start talking to somebody about it, and you're like, oh, but we clearly did not grow up the same. Like our experiences are vastly different. So it's also great to share that with somebody else.
Yeah, and I've actually come to learn that me and my sister, because she listens to it pretty regularly, and she and we grew up in the same household, but we've had different experiences, and we actually want to. I finally asked her, and she's like, I guess I'll do a podcast with you. So I'm hoping to do one with her and talk a little bit more in detail about that. But yeah,
That's really cool. Yeah. So yeah, we'll be talking about like Latin representation in media, entertainment, kind of TVs and shows that we have seen throughout time. Have you, Jerome, watched a lot of, or do you like what is your reference?
I mean, mainly just like admittedly, like all the normal, just like general stuff that's on Western media. So, like we were talking about earlier before we got on mic, like Coco, Book of Life,
Encanto's another one.
Encanto, Roma, like all those films, Selena, of course. And it's like, that's kind of my frame of reference. But then, like, as far as like actual foreign films and stuff that have been made, whether they be here or over there, not so much. But it's mainly just because of for me, it's more of the language barrier of, I like watching international films, but it has to be something that I'm really invested in, because international films, like, I'm still not used to the way other countries make movies compared to Western media and how they make movies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a thing where it's still been I haven't watched a lot of Spanish films or Mexican films that are from that area.
Same.
I think I watched quite a few growing up because of my family. One of the movies that I've always loved growing up was Water, like Water for Chocolate, which if you watch is not technically appropriate for a child, and nor should it be watched under anybody about 15 and younger.
Is it like blue is the warmest color?
A little bit. A little bit.
It's without the gay romance?
Just without the gay romance, yeah. But like, yeah, totally not but it was one of my favorite movies. And in fact, I have the book version, and in the movie, a lot of cooking is done, and it's really beautiful. And in the book, there's also has the recipes for it, and I've actually made the recipes. I've made rose sauce with chicken. It's so good. I love it. It's one of the best parts of the movie and the book. And so I've gotten that exposure mainly from my family, and then just watching it in general, because I find Latin entertainment more entertaining than Western, because Western has a very strict like plot it goes through.
Yeah.
And like you can always kind of figure out the ending. With Latin one, it takes such dramatic turns. These ones I watch with are more influenced by the Mexican culture. They're so dramatic in their turns, and it's always like a big family just out of nowhere, and you're learning all these secrets. So it's like that's more fun, and I can relate to that a little bit. Dramatic family.
Mm-hmm.
So, what about you? Do you often watch Latin films or?
I grew up speaking only Spanish in the household, so a lot of the films and movies I did play were in Spanish. Did I always pay attention to it? No, but La Rosa de Guadalupe.
Yeah.
That was always playing in the background. La Rosa de Guadalupe is like true stories, but dramatized.
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
I didn't know those were true stories.
I don't know if they're true stories or they made it out to seem like they were true. I don't know.
They might have been based on true stories
and very
exaggerated.
But do I remember most of them? Not entirely. It's not really, honestly, until recently that I've been making more of an effort to watch more movies, shows, just with a heavier Latin influence in it, to improve my Spanish and to just see the representation out there, really.
I can understand Spanish really well. I cannot talk it. Yeah, I'm terrible at speaking Spanish. and I wish I could. I've tried to practice. I get tongue twisted very easily, so I cannot do it. But I tend to watch them just because I understand them pretty well.
Yeah.
And even with my family, they'll speak to me in Spanish,
Yeah.
and I address them in English, and it's like, oh, okay, everybody's good, which is nice because I don't. It's like a weird. I do have a language barrier, but I don't have a language barrier with them. So it's pretty neat and stuff. Um, is there? What do you think about like the Latin representation in Western?
It's getting better. It's getting better.
That's fair.
I definitely think that every single time that there was someone of Latin descent represented, it was always usually a negative stereotype. And that was, from what I remember, it made me feel not the greatest because I'm like, those are my people, and you're being represented in a way that it's not, they focus, I think, a lot of the negative stereotypes, and so that was hard. But as I've paid more attention to a lot of more movies and shows, there is a change that I've noticed. But again, there's a change that I've noticed with a whole bunch of different other people and different backgrounds and ethnicity, sexualities, and gender identity and stuff. I've seen more of a change going towards a positive one. So I think we're heading towards the right way. And that actually kind of reminds me of The Lincoln Lawyer. Have you guys seen it yet?
I haven't seen it yet.
not.
I've seen the trailers for it. I haven't actually watched the show yet.
It's good. So the only reason that it pops into my head is the main character, which I can't even remember his name anymore, but I thought I heard an accent when I was watching him, and I was like, I'm a Googler. I was like, what are you? Where are you from? You know? And turns out he's from Mexico, and I think he's actually from Guadalajara, which is where I'm from, or my family's from. And what I like about that show is that, and they talk about it, he's Mexican, and he just happens to be a lawyer. They don't make it a big deal, but they make it aware that's what he is. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, and the fact that he's a lawyer, it's kind of, in a sense, it's a higher education kind of thing where you don't really see that representation of a lot of Latinos being in a position of they've had higher education, doctors, nurses, teachers, educators, stuff like that. So for me, I was like, I got all excited. I was like, it's a main character in a popular Netflix show who happens to be Mexican, and they just didn't really show these negative stereotypes that made me really excited to kind of be like, oh yay.
Well, it's like what we were talking about with Doctor Strange, the character they had in there. Yeah, America. She is supposed to be a lesbian in that movie, or her character in the comics is even a lesbian.
She's gay in the comics, and I think in the movie she is gay, but we were talking about, like, they didn't have time to...
Yeah, like, people became very focused on it, and we're like, oh, they should have done more, they should have showed more. Mm-hmm. I was like, she was running to stop the universe from crumbling. What, did you want her to stop at a gay bar and, like, hit on somebody? Like, that
was my thing. Yeah. I was like, what would be proper representation for you? And that's, like, I know it feels fan servicey in that all she had was the pride pin on her side, but I'm like, and her moms, you get to see them, but at the same time, I'm like, I mean, we don't have time.
Yeah, it's not a major plot point, and I had mentioned, like, oh, the only times I talk about being Mexican often is with, like, my white friends and being like, hey, this is the difference between your culture to my culture, or how I grew up to your thing. So I do like seeing, I think it becomes less of like a talking point in movies and shows, and the characters can just exist. Yeah. Because it doesn't become such a big part. It's not their personality. It's just it's just part of who they are. Yeah. So it's not heavily focused.
That's how I felt about the, I remember when Rogue One came out and Diego Luna was one of the main cast, and I was like, oh snap, there's Mexicans in Star Wars now? We could do that? Like, because it's like, especially like I joke with my friends, but it's true. It's like there's a one black person per trilogy, like, rule, it feels like. And Star Wars, because it's like the OG trilogy, you only get Lando. He's the only black man in the galaxy. Then the new trilogy, it was only Sam Jackson. He's the, like, playing Mace Windu. He's the only black man in the galaxy. And it's like they kind of got better with the sequels. But even then, it's like Finn's the only black person with speaking lines. The rest are in the background, so we can say we have representation, but they don't really get to do anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I will say for Star Wars, like especially Star Wars, it was always almost always white people, and if they weren't just American white, they were British white, and that like so they were even more white than regular white people. So seeing Rogue One, where it was Diego Luna, who's where's Diego Luna from? Do you know anything about Diego Luna?
No.
I forget where he's from, his origins. But he's Hispanic. You got two people who are Asian with Donnie Yen, and I forget the other actor's
Diego
name.
Luna definitely sounds like a Mexican name.
He's probably
a little stereotypic Mexican name.
So he's probably Mexican.
Yeah.
And then you had I forget her name, Felicity Jones as the main character, like like with a female representation. Like the team, that was the most diverse team Star Wars had ever had, and I was like, this is really cool. This is interesting, and it's stuff like that where I'm like, especially because with the sci-fi, we were talking about that I think the last time for the Miss Marvel review.
Yeah.
Of and I was joking around, but it's true. It's like there's no real like Latin superheroes that they've done yet. And not that they don't exist, they just haven't made movies of them. The closest one is DC is currently making a Blue Beetle movie, which is Jaime Reyes, who's the most recent Blue Beetle in the comics. Oh. So that's going to be cool to see him, but I'm like, there's so many others.
Yeah.
And none of them have gotten their own movie.
Yeah, which, when we were discussing about that also, there's not like a lot of like Latin people in comic books either, unfortunately. And you had brought up a couple examples, but they were just either sidekicks or some who is the guy who became Falcon after?
Oh, Torres.
Yeah, so it's like, he picked up another superhero's identity, which is kind of, happy. It's like,
well, that's the thing, is because like America Chavez has her own book. She's like her own character.
Yeah.
And then it's like you have technically Nova is there's a Sam Alexander, but he's I think he's Mexican, but he is Nova in the Marvel comic books. Unfortunately, he's just a reboot of an older character, kind of like Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
Where Miss Marvel, the original Miss Marvel's Carol Danvers, who's white, and then the new Miss Marvel is now Pakistani American or Muslim American. But still, Sam is cool. He's a cool character. He's really interesting. I hope if they ever do Nova, they do Sam. But I don't know if we'll see that in the Marvel movies or anything like that. But there's plenty of them. It's one of those things where it is weird, the like hole there is of not enough Latin representation in like pop culture stuff that's superheroes and sci-fi movies and all those things, and not just in the background.
Sorry, the ADHD urge to not stay quiet.
Oh no, listen.
Oh no,
we cut each other off all the time.
I know, but I try not to. I'm just like, let them finish.
Oh no, you have to cut them off sometimes.
I'm actually surprised you guys didn't mention this because I like Star Wars, but I don't know as much about it as like Harry Potter or
nothing
something?
About Star Wars.
Okay.
I am a Star Trek girl.
All right.
Yeah.
I know less about Star Trek. But I'm surprised you didn't mention the Mandalorian because
I was just thinking about
I was like the main character.
Pedro Pascal
there you go. And so he's from Chile, and the only reason I know that is because the interview that I did with Connie, she's from Chile, and then I was like researching. I was like, who is from Chile? And he is, and I had no idea. I mean, he's also wearing a mask, or not a mask, but his outfit and everything. But I got really excited because I'm like, one of us.
Yeah, because it's always cool to like see a Latin actor being able to just portray a character and not make it a big deal about them being brown or being Latin in that. And I will give it credit to Star Wars because they don't have Latin countries in there, so the actors can just play the characters. They don't have to explain anything about where they're from, who they are, what part of they're from. I do think it's a little funny how in like a lot of movies and shows they'll have the characters from Mexico even though the actors are not, because Mexico is just like the easiest place for them to say they're from.
It's the easiest place in reference.
Yeah.
For them to be. And
I'm always just like, well, that actor is clearly like Puerto Rican to like Argentinian and like all this stuff. It was like people can be from other places. Like, it's okay if you make another Latin country. But, like, yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's just, it's easier point of reference, especially with Western culture.
Yeah. One of the movies that I wanted to talk about was Spy Kids. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is literally the kids are first gen. Are they first gen? The kids are first gen.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
first gen because it's like
It's the father is Latin, the mother is white, but you briefly mention it in there, and they don't make it a huge thing, but it's mentioned. And this was back in what, the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, I'm like, oh, cool. I didn't even think about it. It didn't faze me that these kids are Latin, but they don't make it a big deal. But they do mention, what is it, Danny Trejo?
Yeah.
yeah, machete.
They bring him in there, and but again,
Love
it's
Danny
there,
Trejo.
but they don't really make it as like big of a deal. And as a little kid, it kind of was like, wow, there's people like me, kind of thing, you know. And then
Which I
Yeah.
love Robert Rodriguez's films. If you're young, don't watch any but Spy Kids because you're too young for them. Because I think about like Desperado and Once Upon a Time in Mexico,
Yeah.
and
that was such a good
it was a great movie. I
Oh
love
my
that movie.
god.
It's so funny. I love that directors will have these like cute little kids films, and then you go look up what they've done, and it's just like, what the hell?
Yeah, especially
Like,
Machete. I'm like, don't
Yeah.
watch Spy Kids and then be like, oh, I gotta watch Machete. No,
Yeah.
don't do it.
I love Danny Trejo. I don't know. I genuinely love that man so much.
You said something that I thought of right now. Oh yeah, in Once Upon a Time in Mexico, Enrique Iglesias is in it. He's from
That's
Spain.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
not even Mexican. He's from Spain.
I forget he's in that movie.
I haven't seen that movie.
I haven't
in,
seen it in a long
years,
time.
Yeah.
Long time.
There's been a couple times where I want to say, what was that movie? The Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
One of the characters in the movie, he was Native American,
Mm-hmm.
but they got a Mexican actor to play him, and a couple of my friends were like kind of complaining about it.
Oh, you're thinking of Magnificent Seven.
Oh, Magnificent Seven,
Yeah.
the Western.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hateful Eight's
Um,
also a Western, so that I can see how that's a little confusing.
yeah.
Is that one of them is directed by what's his
Quentin
face?
Tarantino
Is
did
that
Hateful Eight.
Hateful Eight.
Oh, he did
Mhm.
Hateful. Isn't Chris Pratt in Hateful Eight?
No, that's Magnificent Seven.
Okay, so clearly I'm stuck on Magnificent Seven. The character in the movie is Native American, but they got a Mexican to play him, and a couple of friends were complaining. I'm like, at this point, I'm just happy they got a brown person to at least play the Native American, so a little closer to the skin tone. And I'm like, Mexicans are Native Americans, but I'm
See,
like a little more.
But that's my thing about like, because thinking about Miss Marvel, it's like it could have been easy for them to get some like I don't know, get like Victoria Justice or something, and just being like, hey, you look brown enough, right? You can be Muslim here, just like like
Yeah.
you want to be in this
Yeah.
show, and instead they're like, no, we're gonna go find a Pakistani descended girl to play this character because it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And not only that, but also behind the camera, there's so many people who are from South Asia who are behind the camera too, working on Miss Marvel.
Yeah, and it's almost like if you have people that know about the culture and good representation, it does well.
So
Yeah.
it matters it should matter for a studio to go out and find someone who is from that area or from that country, or at least a descendant from that country or whatever, to
Especially
play that character.
if the culture is so big to it, like with Miss Marvel, they talk about their faith and stuff. So it's like, okay, this is somebody who should at least know more about the faith and just not running their lines. Yeah, with that movie, it was well as Quentin Tarantino. So like, I wasn't expecting much out of him.
Oh no, Quentin.
Yeah,
well,
so
when
I was
you
just-
said
that's
that,
why I was like-
the Mexican representation of Hateful Eight is garbage.
I don't think I've
usually
seen that
is.
movie, so I'm kind of a little up in the air.
Well, it's because it's just the fact that like Bob the Mexican is just so stereotypical,
Yeah.
like Mexican character. He barely gets any lines, and everything is all like, "You're calling me a liar, cabron?" Like that's
Yeah.
the level we're at, where it's just caricature, and I'm like. I mean, you work with Robert Rodriguez. You're gonna do this thing. You're gonna do him like this.
Yeah.
You gonna do him
Okay.
like that. You know
I
he's
have-
gonna watch this movie.
Not to. I feel so bad interrupting.
No,
You're good. You're good.
So, speaking of like people who are actually part of this culture, I feel like that media has progressed where they're actually making more of an effort now to get people who are of their character. I remember, I think there was talk about the live action, the Genie movie.
Aladdin.
Oh,
Aladdin. There you go. I couldn't think of it, but I remember hearing like people were talking like, oh, making sure that they were going to be getting actual representation. So the two characters, Aladdin and Jasmine, are of actual oh my gosh,
I think Persian descent.
Persian
is what
descent.
Yeah,
Their
they're
sons,
looking for.
they're definitely of that descent. And I think people were upset about Will Smith not being,
They
but
were
I
upset
wasn't
about
too sure.
With the Will Smith thing. It was like people didn't think he could live up to the Genie.
Yeah.
And then people were upset with Jasmine because I think she's not fully
But
Persian. She's like half Persian.
She's,
or
I
whatever.
believe it's she is Iranian.
Oh,
So
okay.
my
Gotcha.
sister-in-law is Persian.
Uh-huh.
There's a clear, distinct difference apparently between Persian and Iranian, and so it comes down to Persians, are slowly getting erased from history. So when you have a character that's Persian, when you have a character that's so prominent in culture, in media, and then to have it played by somebody else, it does hurt. It's the same way when they get a Puerto Rican to play a Mexican or a Mexican to play a Puerto Rican.
Well, that's what J-Lo had to deal with Selena because she wasn't. I don't think I can't remember. Is it that she wasn't fully Mexican or that she just wasn't Mexican?
She's Puerto Rican.
Yeah, she's not.
Because I couldn't remember which one it was.
Yeah, and Selena was such a big Mexican icon. She was one of the first singers that was introduced into mainstream media, pop culture. We got to see her win awards, be the front, and then have somebody of this. It is a different culture, and then have somebody play her who doesn't understand the Mexican culture. They may be similar, but they are different. To play her kind of felt like, well, you're just kind of trashing Selena. That's what it felt like. So a lot of people were upset by that.
Yeah, which it's the Aladdin thing though. I was like, hold on though. If we're gonna go down that road, we have to stop on over to hit up Mr. Gyllenhaal real quick for being in Prince of Persia. Knowing full well he's not Persian.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, it's such a
like at all. And I was just like, why are you the main character? You should turn this down. You're Jake Gyllenhaal. You make plenty of money. There's no reason you had to take this role.
There was something I mentioned earlier when you're talking about Hateful Eight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I've only seen the Book of Life once, and I don't remember who all the characters were, but I remember I felt like they were really trying too hard to have like the characters sound like they're from Latin America, like the accents that they had in it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking like, did you really have to do that? It just felt like a little bit forced, whereas Coco felt so much more natural.
It was very natural.
Very natural. And I guess that was the only reason, or like one of the reasons I didn't really like the Book of Life as much. I don't know, I felt like they were trying a little too hard. It was nice to have like that kind of representation, be like, oh, like another aspect of it. But Coco though, oh my God.
I think what was great about the Book of Life was that because everybody knows about the Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
But they don't know what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, sugar skulls. And, you pray to the dead. It's like, no, that's not it at all. So Book of Life gave a little bit more idea, but I don't really recall the voices, honestly. It's been some time. But, with Coco made me cry.
Coco was good. Coco was very good.
And I like that they brought up how the dog was his spirit animal or his spirit guide. Which again is not often talked about in Mexican culture. It's seen more as a Native American thing, but like it is part of Mexican culture because Mexicans do come from Native Americans.
Yeah.
So a big part,
a lot of crossover.
Yeah, it's a linear thing. And so I thought that was really cool that they brought that in and showed that part, and it was like, oh, yes, this can be a thing, cultures do intertwine with other cultures, and it's a great way to show that.
You guys were saying Book of Life reminded me of cause I think the designer, like the art design, even though it was 3D, was the person who did one of my favorite cartoons of all time, El Tigre.
Wait,
I don't think I ever watched that.
Why does that sound so familiar?
El Tigre was on Nickelodeon. It was a show about Manny Rivera, who's this kid, and his dad is a superhero, which is White Panthera, and his grandpa is a supervillain who's Puma
Oh my
Loco,
god!
and he's trying to skirt the line. He's like, he doesn't know if he wants to be a hero or a villain, so he's kind of, growing up as a kid, he's trying to do both.
Memory
Wow,
unlocked.
yeah, no kidding. I now remember that.
Oh my god!
I
And then that
love
reminds
Del
me of
Tigre.
That was such a cute.
the little Lucha Libre kids.
Yeah, Lucha also.
Lucha, yeah,
I
that
used to
one I
watch
never
it.
watched.
No, oh my god,
That
I
was on
remember
Cartoon
watching that
Network.
one.
It was so good.
remember
I
the
loved
one.
Lucha.
That's a heavy memory unlocked. I'm like getting flashbacks to a bunch of episodes now.
I remember because it got a proper ending and everything. Like that show went. I think it ran for like 3 or 4 seasons, but it was great. I loved El Tigre when I was a kid. And
Yeah,
it was probably kind of thing. It was probably the closest I got to like a lot of Latin representation as a kid.
yeah.
As stuff I watch outside of Spy Kids, because I watched the shit out of Spy Kids. But El Tigre and Lucha, I was like, this is so cool.
I love going back and watching those kind of cartoons when I was younger and seeing like, oh yeah, this had the Latin representation, and just like kind of watching them be like, this is really nice, but at the same time be like, this is borderlining on certain like offensive or certain thing. Because I've been watching Looney Tunes on HBO Max.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a nice not paying attention, and they
Is
have
it
these
the
little
new ones or the old ones?
the middle ones. It's from like 2011.
Oh, okay.
They're really good, and I recommend everybody watch it because it's just funny and it's a nice like shut off your brain type of deal. They do little musical bits in the middle, and I was actually on FaceTime with my sister, and I was like, "Oh, look at this!" They did a song with Speedy and Gonzalez, and it was the Queso Bandido, which I was like, "This is really cute and really catchy," but at the same time, there are certain parts where he's getting chased by the feds, where I'm like. Just right there. Maybe you didn't have to add that part, but like it was cute. He's taking cheese from the rich and giving it to the poor. But then like the end credit scene had just a pinch of pinatas around him, and I was like, that is there again, just like right there, where it's just like
I mean, I'm
tiny bit of him.
surprised he made the cut for Space Jam 2 in the same outfit, just with the sombrero and everything.
That totally reminds me of Speedy Gonzalez and how that stereotype, like they made him a little stereotype,
Yeah.
and how that just like popped into my head.
But back then, it was like people were craving just any representation because they originally did try to take him off the air, but there was a backlash from a lot of Mexicans and a lot of Latin people because they're like, look, we're not getting much. Like the little mouse that's fast, we're cool with that.
Yeah.
I think when it got offensive is when they brought in his cousin, I believe.
Oh yeah,
Slow Gonzalez.
Yeah, Slowpoke Gonzalez, I think, or something like that.
Where he looked like he was stoned all the time, and it's like, okay, this is where we gotta draw the line. This is not okay. I get you're trying to make the opposite of him, but like Slowpoke Gonzalez is like, no.
I mean, it's no different than you watch old Tom and Jerry cartoons, and when they showed like for a while it was just a white family that had Tom, but a lot of people forget in the earliest version of the cartoon it was a black lady with the hair tie, like the mammy character with big ass lips and everything.
Oh, I do
and it
not
was
remember
terrible.
that.
And they've but that was like way back when Tom and Jerry first got started, and then afterwards I don't know what happened. I think they tried to just make it more relatable to white America, and so then they changed Tom's design and Jerry's design and made it more white America household. But
Did not know that.
it's just so it's like
I vaguely remember those old cartoons. So I was like, yeah, I remember like the old cartoons from when I was younger where they're like, oh yeah, there's somebody like me, and then like looking back and being like, okay, I get why I liked it at the time, but now that I'm older and know more, it's like this is borderlining on offensive, and I'm just like, I'm not cool with this as an adult. I think Speedy Gonzalez is still good though. A little racist in some parts when they have, the feds chasing him. But like stealing cheese from the rich and giving it to the poor, I'm cool with that part. He's cool doing that.
I can't remember. Pardon me. Nacho Libre.
Nacho Libre also
with Jack Black.
Yeah, with Jack Black.
Yeah,
that was hella offensive.
It's one of those movies where I'm like divided because I'm like I like it, it's funny, but at the same time it is very offensive. It's very like how many stereotypes can we fit into one movie? We're gonna try and break the record.
I hate those movies that are sometimes like, this is super offensive, but I do like it. Like Casa de Padre. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It has Will Ferrell in it.
Yes.
Oh yes.
It's
Oh my
staged
god.
like
remember
it's
it.
staged like a novella.
Yeah.
That movie is so fucking offensive and so racist. But like, I enjoy it every time I watch it. Like, I watched it a couple. I laugh really hard, and it's like I don't want to enjoy it, but I'm enjoying it. So it's like,
I do commend Will Ferrell for at least doing the entire film in Spanish.
Yeah. he's
Yeah,
entirely
That
Spanish.
I mean, that's a whole different language. I don't know that I'd be able to do that as easily. So that, I mean, I can commend him on that.
that's fair.
Despite
Yeah,
how
he did keep it. Yeah, but I just there are certain parts where I'm like,
It's just the fact of it's not his culture. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like, I think about, like, when we did review for Black Dynamite. Like, the reason that movie has become a staple in the black community is because also, even though it's, like, making fun of blaxploitation films, is because a black man is doing it. Like, both behind the camera and in front of it.
yeah,
Versus Casa de Padre, it's like, it's a white dude pretending to be Hispanic. Or
Yeah.
pretending to be Mexican
Mm-hmm.
and doing a novella style. And even though it's like all in Spanish and it's got like all the dressings of a novella, it still is a white dude doing it.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Same with like the movie. It's the horror film that just came out. Well, not just came out. It's a. I completely blanked on it. It's part of The Conjuring.
Oh, La Llorona.
Oh, La
or-
Llorona.
Thank
La
you.
Llorona.
Yeah. Why? I don't know. I was blogging on that.
I mean, I
Um,
couldn't. I mean, I didn't guess it either.
Yeah. Yeah. My brain was just like, no, we're not going to remember any of those words. The main character, she's white.
Mhm.
She has half Mexican kids. Her husband was Mexican, but at the same time, it's like you made the main focus of a movie that is a Mexican legend white. It's like, why though? Why did you have to do that?
Mhm.
And then everybody else who's supporting and helping her are, you know, the other cop friend, because her husband was a cop, is black, and then the priest that they bring in, the priest, which is Mexican, and it's just like she's kind of nitpicking also when he's trying to help her, like doing all the things like rubbing the egg across the doorway to help cleanse spirits or detect evil and presence. She has to nitpick everything. It's like you fucking invited him in, and now you're upset because he's rubbing an egg around things. Like, clearly the priest you went to originally wasn't helping you. Maybe like don't be an ass about it.
Exactly.
But like, yeah, it's when they put like, it's a cultural film, it's a story well known in Mexican culture, and then they put a white person right in the front and center of it, and it's like, this kind of takes away from it a bit.
I'll be
So-
honest, I was disappointed.
Oh, that movie was awful in general.
Mhm.
That movie was just
I
it was
really
trash.
wanted to like it, but I mean, for
Well,
those of
they
you,
also twist the story around. The
I
story
can't
is not-
remember. It's been a while, but I do remember. I'm like, there's so much potential with this story that I feel like they went stereotypical horror movie kind of way.
Oh yeah, they
Like,
definitely.
there's just so much potential, and something that crossed my mind right now is a lot of these movies with these non-Latin people. It's a way for them to get. It's like sometimes it feels like it's like the only way that it can even get into mainstream media is to have someone who isn't of Latin descent to be the main character, someone who happens to be well known. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, they do that with Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, ScarJo's been hitting
so,
it
so
like,
many
a
films
couple
where,
times.
where she should not be the main center of a film. Like
Ghost
Oh,
in the Shell's the
yeah,
worst.
that was the
one.
biggest one.
I was like, explain.
That is one that's set in Japan.
Well, it's an anime.
Yeah, it's an anime.
It's an anime, and it's mega. And even though, like, because they did like an interview thing, with, in Japan with,
Yeah,
you know, on the Japanese, like I think in like Tokyo, like just out here in the like where the market is and stuff.
yeah.
And they went around being like, hey, like, what do you think about the poster? Like, what do you think about this? Because the poster was her front and center as the character, and so they're like, what do you think about the her playing this character? And they were like, oh man, well, she looks like the character. I'm excited to see the movie. And at the time, I was like, if the Japanese are cool with it, I'm cool with it.
Mm-hmm.
Where they lost me is when you watch the movie and then they try to pull a, oh no, see, like we didn't just like cast a white woman as Japanese. That'd be offensive. No, see, the story is that she was originally a Japanese woman, then she died, then we put her consciousness into this white robot woman. So she's still Japanese, and I'm like, that's worse. Okay. Just make her white. You should have just made her white at that point. Like that's even worse.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that, and like originally people seemed to be okay with it, and then the more information that came out about the movie, they're like, no, and then reviews came out, actual reviews, and people were like, this is terrible. Why would you do something like? Yeah, and there was another one where Scarlett Johansson played a woman of color, or a character that was supposed to be a woman of color, and they're like, you should not be doing this. This is not something you should be doing.
There's going to be another movie that never got greenlit where she was supposed to play a trans, or a woman who becomes a trans man, I think, or something like that.
Oh, Lord.
And a lot of people were like, all right, this is the last straw. This is where we draw the line.
Like, I love where people draw the line at certain stuff. They're like, racial issues, perfectly fine if you do a racist movie. But like transgender, that's too far.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, it's not that she was in, especially for like stuff like Ghost in the Shell, that's not her fault. That's like,
she agreed.
She agreed, but at the same time, like as a person who also wants to be an actor, it's like work is work sometimes. Like sometimes a paycheck's a paycheck.
Yeah, but it's Scarlett Johansson. She had Avengers money. She's fine.
I think it's with the Avengers though. It's a weird thing because like every person who was a part of the Avengers at that time, the second they did anything outside of the Avengers, no money. It bombed. All of Chris Hemsworth's movies that he did outside of Thor at that time were bombs. Chris Evans, he only did like indie films, so it didn't matter that it didn't make a lot of money, but they did not make a bunch of money. Scarlett Johansson was the same way. She did Lucy, made no money. Ghost in the Shell, made no money. Like so it was like a curse. Like anyone who was in Avengers, like the only thing that makes money is Avengers.
But still, you can't tell me that like that was still a good idea. Clearly, it was not.
It was not a good idea, but I understood it from a standpoint of it's a popular culture thing that everybody's into. Like Ghost in the Shell's been around since the 90s.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of people are into it. So I could see Scarlett Johansson being like, oh, I love Ghost in the Shell. I'll do this movie. And not think about it that way. But my thing is, where were the producers at to be like, maybe we shouldn't cast a white woman for the main character for this Japanese property we're making? Like just
yeah, the same with like a lot of Latin films where they'll find somebody who can like maybe barely pass as Latin that have like 1/14 in them, and they're like, look, they do come from Latin background, and it's like, oh, okay, yes and no at the same time, because then it's just like, that's like, I'm 3% Irish. Can I pass as an Irish person in a film? Does that count for anything? And it's something like that. Like I would not try to play a white person in a film. I clearly cannot pass for that. There are still, facial recognitions that we have that is easy to point out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always interesting when somebody clearly should not be playing a role like that plays a role.
Yeah, which the problem is that's too much based off star power.
Yeah.
With the West. Like in other countries, it seems like it's more about casting the right person for that role. In the West, it's all about, well, who's the biggest name we can get that looks somewhat close to the character or somewhat close to what we're looking for, or is ethnic enough or Latin enough, or whatever the case may be.
Do you guys remember, I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was based in Hawaii. I think it was from like a book going into a film or something, but Emma Stone was in it, and there was people were upset because
I remember the movie. I can't remember what it's called.
They were like, why are you casting someone who's obviously not Hawaiian to play this Hawaiian character? I can't remember much about it. I just remember hearing that people were upset about it. She was
supposed to be like from Hawaii.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were upset that she played that character, which I didn't watch the movie, so I don't know if the excuse was, yeah, I grew up here, but I've actually, my whole family's white.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you actually see her family in the movie, which is why people were upset, because they're like, she's saying she's from Hawaii, so shouldn't she be native Hawaiian and not like a clearly stark white girl?
I can't remember much. It was a while ago. I think it was like military in it or something. But
I
like,
think I vaguely remember what you're talking about. Remember another issue with that film was like the love interest was like 15 years older than her too. That was another
Yeah,
thing, a
because I
part
think
of it.
George Clooney was in that movie.
Yeah.
Maybe, or
No,
somebody
he
like
was in
his.
another Hawaiian film, Descendants.
Right, he was in the Descendants.
But that was actually about a white family living in Hawaii. But yeah, I remember something from that film being that the love interest was like 15 to almost 20 years older than her. And they're like, why do you keep doing this? This is creepy. In real life and in movies, this is creepy.
I don't think the movie did well.
It's not.
I
It did not
I
do
don't
well.
I
think it did
clearly
well.
none of us can remember it, so it can't have done too well. But yeah, it's something like that where it's like, especially when you're talking about like certain areas and then being like, yeah, they're native born there or they're from there. It's like, no, they're not, and I can clearly tell. So why are you making it such a big part of the story then?
Mm-hmm.
If it's a part of the story and it's significant, then you need to get the person who is part of that culture in there. Like the movie To All the Boys I Loved.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading an article about it, and they wanted to cast a white actress, and the person who wrote the book was like, "No, you can't do that." They're like, "What does it matter?" She's like, "Her, I want to say Japanese, but I am unsure." Was important to the story. There were scenes in there that were important, showing off her culture, showing off where her families are from. So she's like, "No, I need a person of Asian descent to play this character, or I'm not going to allow you guys to use my book."
Right.
And it was specifically because she's like, there are scenes and it's important to the story. And if it's something like that, you're bringing up, you're acknowledging it, you're kind of putting on the front, then you should get somebody more focused on it. If you're just having a character that you really, nobody's like acknowledged about it, like the big thing with like Hermione right now, they have a black actress playing Hermione on Broadway. And
yeah,
they
because they
cast
had Alfre Woodard played her in when they did Harry Potter and Half-Blood Prince, when they put it immediately on Broadway when it first started. It was Alfre Woodard played that character, and a lot of people were like, "This is weird."
Yeah, and then
Hermione,
and then a lot of people got upset. But even J.K. Rowling was like, "I described her as curly haired and clever."
See,
they're like, "Nowhere did I state she was white."
I don't
so
believe
you can't do that
though. I don't believe, because I'm like, you're a white woman in England. I'm telling you now, there is a black populace in England. There's not enough that you can tell me this average white woman from there thought about having a black character.
But she actually, I haven't read the books, but I have friends who have read them a lot, saying they actually don't often mention race in the book, which is kind of nice. I mean, J.K. Rowling's still kind of trash because she's like,
from what I remember reading it, I don't remember much about races being mentioned either.
Yeah, because she did say she wanted people to feel like you could put yourself in that place, which I thought was cool. She's still transphobic, fuck her, but like, yeah. And then people were all upset. They're like, "Well, show me in the part of the story where she's white." And she's not a curly-haired person with like, oh, there's my phone. Curly-haired person that was just clever, and like many cultures have curly hair, you know.
But I just, I don't know. I didn't buy that when she said it. Where I was just like, it feels like you're doing a lot of course correction because you realized you wrote a book with nothing but white characters in a world where all people of all colors love your books and movies. Like, and that's, but I'm like, just be okay with the fact that you missed out on that. Like, yeah, it happens.
I mean, I don't know if she thought about it. I mean, they don't even teach math or science in that school, so like,
I'm just saying, because I'm like, no one is giving Dune a hard time because every character in that story is white.
Yeah, but Dune has so many problems. I couldn't get through.
What do you mean Dune has problems?
I got into 15 minutes and that was
It's more like you got bored. That's nothing wrong with the story. That's worrying about your attention span.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get into Paul's story.
I can't remember much about it, but I remember enjoying it. But it could have been one of those movies that I just enjoy because it's like a lot going on that I'm like, I can just sit back and like, woo.
I hear after the like a little while more into the movie, like it gets more interesting. Mm-hmm. But like I'm very much at the beginning. If something is not catching my interest, I'm done. I'm not gonna bother. I don't care that it gets more interesting. I can't. Like about 50 minutes in, I quit. Yeah, I was like, I'm good. And like everybody's like, oh, it gets more interesting. There's more fighting, more spaces,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no.
But I'm referring more to the book because the movie has like, or the most recent movie has a bunch of people of color
Yeah.
in it. But the book, I mean, is just it's all white people, like almost all of it anyway.
All I can think is like Oscar Isaac and Jason Momoa.
And then you didn't get to this part, but
Oh.
there's a black woman who was, and then Zendaya too. Actually, all of the Sand people are like most of them are of color.
That
I
seems
can
about
see
right.
how that's problematic
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like
Right?
that
Because
seems
isn't
fair.
it because the people, the like main character people, aren't they like invading the planet?
It's that all of they're coming there to tap the resources, but unlike it's kind of the classic like Pocahontas type tale where it's like, yes, all these white people are here to take my resources, but I am the nice white person who has come to an agreement so that I can still take the resources, but I'm nice about it. And it's kind of the same thing where like in Dune, the House Atreides are the nice people who are like, we'll still take the spice because we need it, but we won't kill you for it. We'll just like come to some type of arrangement where we can take your spice and then maybe you can like, I don't know, live here or something. Or they never get that far because House Atreides gets wiped out in the first part of the spoilers for Dune. But they never get to the negotiation part, so it doesn't really matter. But and then Paul ends up with, I keep calling this the Fremen. That's their name, the Fremen. Sand people Star Wars, which I am still, even though they use it all the time in Star Wars to describe Tusken Raiders, I still feel like it's a racist term.
Oh, it is. For people,
it just sounds
Sand
racist.
people, I think, is kind of an offensive term for people from the Middle East.
I'm just saying, like,
so
in Star Wars, it even sounds offensive. Like they're like they call the Tusken Raiders Sand people. And I'm like, that sounds like a racist thing you would call a Tusken Raider.
I can see that, yeah. I think certain things that they'll say in like films and movies, it's not technically racist or offensive, but the way they're using it almost like a nickname is like, dude, that's not really cool, and I don't really like that. And then if anybody addresses me like that, I'm gonna have a problem. So it's like, why would you think it's okay? Like when they say hombre, or like in certain shows I've watched, or like movies where it's like a teenagers and stuff like that, they'll call their like Spanish friend hombre, and it's just like, why though? Like why was that necessary to do that?
Yeah,
especially when it's your like the white friend, just say use my name.
I mean, depends on the person. I know a lot of surfers and skateboarders who they refer to their friends as hombres, just whether they're white or not. Like,
it's still such a weird.
I think that's more just a you thing.
I might be. I think it's weird.
I feel like there are cooler names.
No, you're good.
I feel like there's cooler names, nicknames. So I get that.
My favorite one right now is either you play Cyberpunk 2077.
No.
In the world of Cyberpunk, a lot of languages have kind of fused together in the city. More specifically, a lot of Spanish. And so they've taken the word chumba and shortened it to chum when they describe when they're like, yeah, that's my chum right there. Like, that's my best friend. That's my friend and stuff.
Actually, that's very common in Mexican culture to do that. My mom and her sister, they would call each other Doña, and I learned that it comes from a full word or something that means whale. So they were calling each other affectionately whale. I can't remember how it got to Doña or how it gets that. But originally they called each other whale, and then it just kept breaking down into nicknames like that. And it's funny because like with me and my sister, I'm 5'5", which I'm the tallest one in my family. I hold that honor greatly, and she's like 5'3". So I used to call her Shorty, and then it came to Short, and then I call her Short. And so like I still just call her Short, and people are like, why are you insulting her like that? And sometimes, like, at least for Mexicans, I've noticed that we use insults as nicknames for each other, and then when like somebody who's not used to it hears it, they're like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, oh, could I just call her Short because she's
I mean,
short.
Listen, black people call each other nigga all the time, and that's like the ultimate black insult. So
that's fair.
Like,
I mean, that's one word, but we'll go for like appearance and like we'll go for like appearance, anything actually.
My ex, skinny dude, his family would always call him Flaco, which means skinny, and that's a common nickname to call a lot of other people. And it's funny. I forgot where I was going with that.
It's funny that it's a lot of ones also go on weight, like gordito, which is just like chunky or fat. We used to call my little cousin that for a long time, and then we would end up just calling him like gordo.
Pelon, my sister's husband, his nickname. I can't call him by his real name. I'm like, no, your name is Pelon, which means baldy, and he just has short hair. But even when his hair does grow out, they just call him Pelon, and that's a super common nickname that I hear people all the time.
Honestly, to know, I had an uncle. We called him Hippie because he used to be a hippie, but I actually didn't know his real name up until maybe I was like 19, 20. I had never thought about it. And she's like, oh, I think it's either Daniel or David. I'm not entirely sure anymore because I still never addressed him by that. And she's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, who? She's like, your uncle. And I'm like, I have an uncle named Daniel. And she's like, Heapy. And I'm like, his name is Daniel? Like, why was I never told this? Because you just get so used to these nicknames. And like, I get like, but it's like, then you always address him by the nickname.
Yeah.
Pick my name or a nickname.
I have an uncle who he's mi tío Nene, and that was his name, Nene. And when I found out his name was Elias, I was like, what the is that? I thought his name the entire time was Nene, and I think it means like not Nena, Nene. It's like sweet kid, small kid, something like that.
Yeah. I think it's like you're referring to like
Nene, the little kid,
kind of a very young child.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always funny. I do enjoy the nicknames. They're kind of mean sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why we do that, but like we do. Again, at least for Mexican culture, I don't know if like all Latin cultures do that.
I don't know.
But see, I would be fine if somebody was doing, for some weird reason, I'd be more comfortable with somebody doing that in like a film than calling somebody hombre.
You know what? Yeah, I agree with you on that.
My essay.
Essay is the
just,
one that
it's like, just like
permeated the zeitgeist.
Yeah, so it's like those two. I was like
that or Holmes.
Holmes, yeah. Those two. Those are like the three. Those three are like the ones where I'm like, but like yeah, if they called them fat in Spanish, I'd be like, oh yeah, haha. Like I'd be okay with that.
Yeah,
because that one's okay.
Yeah, black people that you don't quite have those. It's just like variations on people's names, but it's never like for example, like my familial nickname is Jay, but that's just because my dad has the same name I do, so it helps to differentiate. But also B, that's just the first letter of my name. Like I have a cousin, her name's Taylor, but we call her Taylor. Like another one named Levante, we call her Vante. It's always
so you just shorten the name.
Shorten.
I mean, I don't have any of those nicknames.
I used to have one as a little kid. They used to call me, one of them is Ojos de Gato, which is cat eyes, because I have hazel eyes. They were greener, I think, when I was younger. And they would also used to call me Monica Lewinsky.
Ooh.
Which I had no idea. I thought just because of the way they said it, Monica Lewinsky, I thought it was just like a little cute nickname or whatever. And then I got older and I'm like, wow, that's kind of tough to call a little kid that.
Yeah. Actually, I think I was called the little abuela, which is just like little grandmother. And I didn't know for so long, it was my dad's side. I don't know why they used to call me that until like one day it hit me. I was like, I look exactly like my father. My father looks exactly like my grandmother. So I look like my grandmother, and that's why they were calling me that. Years and years. I swear to God, it only hit me maybe when I was like 24 or something. Because I had spoken to one of them on the phone, and they called me that again. I was like, why do they keep calling me little? I'm like, oh my God, I finally understand it now. And it's so weird when nicknames click in your head like that. It's like, I get it. Everything makes sense. But
before I did want to talk about one more show that I like. Which is sad because it's canceled now. But it was Penny Dreadful City Angels.
I don't think I ever saw that one.
Penny Dreadful, the original series was like a play on all the Penny Dreadful novels, like Dorian Gray, Frankenstein, Dracula, all that good stuff. And it was like, what if it all took place in the same universe at the same time? And it was really cool. It took place in like Victorian London. It was interesting. It was dark. and then it got canceled. Then they wanted to reboot it, and then they were like, okay, we're doing Penny Dreadful again, but this time it's an original story, no Penny Dreadful novels, and we're going to it's going to take place in Los Angeles. And that was it. I did not know that it was going to be so heavily reliant on the main character, who's Chicano, and he becomes a detective. And it's during the 1930s, but the late 1930s, just before World War II was started. And so it's this really interesting, and that's only important because one character is a guy who represents for the Nazi Party in America, but this is back when everyone thought the Nazi Party was just a political party, and they're like, yeah, we just stand for peace and like unity, you know, that's what we're about. And it's like, it's just before everything's about to pop off. I mean, it's like, yeah, peace and unity, my ass. But the main character, him being a Chicano detective, is so important because of I learned so much about like how the police response was, because it also takes place in California. So it's just a lot of the police brutality and like all that stuff is talked about in that show. And especially from his perspective, because he's like, I want to be a cop because I want to protect my people, but also and represent the badge in a way that's honorable, but at the same time, like his family and a lot of people in his community are shunning him because they're like, you're a cop now, like we don't be cops, we're against the cops.
No, and especially during that time, and being Chicano is something that like it's a little more, because like just because you may be Mexican or Latin doesn't necessarily make you Chicano. It is part of the culture and thing. Is I'm considered Chicano because of where I grew up and everything like that. And it's like, you can't trust the cops. And to have somebody become a cop, it's kind of like, turning to the other side where it's like, we're in our family, but I'm not going to talk to you about shit that I've done. I don't trust you now.
Oh, he goes full native too, because he asks later in the show, he falls in love with this white girl, and I was like, you're just making it worse. They already don't like you because you're a detective. Then you're going to bring this white girl up in here too?
And I'm familiar with the LAPD, which is like LAPD, Chicago PD, and New York PD. My hair. Are the biggest known for brutality. They're like the three highlights.
Yeah, him
it's
being
like,
an LAPD cop was just
that's
like
the word.
You've taken it to the next extreme, man. Like I remember, especially there's a scene in it that's like so hard to watch. I'm sure even harder for those who are Chicano, where because it's like it's a whole family of them. It's him, his brother who's like older and is trying to get in with the construction union and is like super anti-police. His grandmother and or I think she's just his mother actually. His mother, and then he has a younger brother who is growing up and he's very riled up, but he doesn't know anything, and he ends up falling into a bad crowd with a lot of hoods at the time. And but they also are like really good. Like you get to meet them too, and they're interesting and different. And then he has a younger sister who's big into the church and that sort of stuff. And there's a scene where the younger brother and the younger sister get stopped by a police officer, and you see this police officer just straight up just sexually assault this teenage girl. And it's this really, like, the way they filmed it was very visceral, but it was important in the sense that it was like, this is what it was back then. And I feel like stuff like that is probably why the show got canceled. Because they're like, this show is too honest. I mean, they'll never say that on paper. I think on paper they said, like, it wasn't getting ratings. But I was like, I feel like the other half of it is, like, this show was very honest about what it was like between the LAPD and the Chicano community at the time.
And that's a lot of times shows get canceled when it has people of color or something like that, where it's one controversial topic, but it's a controversial topic that we live and deal with all the time. So it's like, yes, of course we're going to show it because this is something that's part of us. I don't have too many recommendations on shows like to watch, but I definitely do have a couple movies and I wrote them down. Like Water for Chocolate, not appropriate for children. It's a very sexual movie. But it is a very good movie, and it does discuss a lot about family.
I'm gonna write that down. Say it one more time. Water for chocolate.
Water, like Water for Chocolate. It's up back in like I think the 10s or something like that.
Interesting.
It's like rural Mexico, and I think it's around actually the Mexican Revolution. But it is a beautiful film, beautifully shot. Again, very sexual, but like such a good film, and it was always one of my favorite growing up. Not appropriate, but it's always one of my favorite. But if you just want to watch something that can beautifully represent any Latin culture and Mexican culture, Coco is a good way to start. That is a nice
Coco
simple film.
or Encanto.
I actually have not
I
seen
don't know.
Encanto, but I told someone I don't need to watch it to know what it's about.
To be
Yeah.
honest, you don't, because I was just like, this feels like, if you've seen Turning Red, you've seen the movie. It's the same, like,
Was it with the red panda? On Disney Plus too. I think it's good. It's a lot of backlash between, which is again very prominent in Latin cultures, especially when you're a first generation. Backlash between older generation, younger generation.
yeah.
Younger generation trying to do their own thing, but still the older generation's like, well, no, we're this, and
Yeah.
you're like, cool, we're this, but I'm also being raised around this.
Yeah.
So I'm like this fun, weird mix where
Mhm.
it becomes I'm like too Mexican for the white people, but too white for the Mexicans, and it's like cool. Just gonna chill out here.
Yeah, that's happening to be a lot of the movies that we're getting right now between what is it? It's like now like get Turning Red, Encanto, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's such a good. Have you seen that one?
No, but it sounds really familiar. I think I want to watch
It's
it.
the multiverse one.
With
got-
Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, it's good. It is so good. I loved it.
My brain is going blank right now, but I feel like as soon as I see a photo or something, I'll be like, oh.
Yeah, it was insanely good. That one's Asian culture, but that's still recommended. That was such an insanely good
Yeah,
film.
a lot of the familial trauma movies are coming out. Although I'm worried that that's going to start becoming like, because also Ms. Marvel too,
Oh, yeah.
same
Fighting
thing.
against the-
So I'm just like, it's starting to get to a point where I'm like, all right, like we've got enough. We don't need all of the movies and TV shows with the brown people to be about familial trauma. Like it was slave movies at one point. Now then it was like all the stuff from the 60s. Now it's just familial trauma. I'm like, I would like just a few movies where there's no trauma.
Well, yeah,
We're just having a good time. We're all having fun. Just chill.
Well, no, Coco has familial trauma too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually is a heavy plot point.
You know what? We get In the Heights. That's the one where
There you
everyone's just
go.
having a good time. No one is. There's
Nice.
no familial trauma. It's all just, hey, you know, we're all singing and dancing in the streets.
That's true.
It's all about
Probably.
gentrification. I'll give you
And
that.
that is another talking point.
But you know what? I'll take what I can get.
It's by Lin-Manuel too, so I'm like,
Yeah.
I was
Mhm.
like,
Also, he did the music for Encanto too.
no
So
way.
That's why.
That's why it hits.
That was
real.
that was the big thing when Encanto came out. Was that
Have you
was
heard any of the songs?
was the cast, and
Dun,
then
dun, dun, dun. Wait, how does it go?
if you've heard,
I've heard the
Don't
songs.
talk about. Let's.
We don't talk about Bruno.
We don't
is
talk
the
about
big one.
Bruno.
And then
Yeah.
there's dun, dun, dun. I can't
Are you talking about the Pressure song?
Yes, that one.
I love those two
Yeah,
songs.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does a great job. All the music in Encanto is awesome.
Yeah. I recommend. Yeah, you'll understand, and how it ends is again like you can get there before the movie's even over. But like the music in there is like so pretty, and then I do like that in animated films they're able to show the colorfulness
Yeah.
of Latin because in a lot of like
Yeah.
in normal Latin movies or shows they don't get to be as colorful.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the animation, you can actually see the color.
Mhm.
That's the best
Like-
part about Black Panther was that it was like colorful.
Yeah.
It's like Africa is very colorful. It's
Yeah.
not always just green and brown.
Yeah,
A
like
lot of cultures are very colorful.
yeah, and like going back to the Day of the Dead, people are like, oh, dressing in like darker tones or things like that, or white and black. And it's like, no, it's a happy celebration,
Especially
and it's like orange.
Coco. The
Yeah.
way they use color in that movie
Oh
is
my
just
God.
like gorgeous. That's I remember when the teaser came out. The teaser for that movie was just that scene with forget the main character's name right now.
Coco.
But,
No, it's not.
no, Coco's the grandmother.
No.
Um,
No.
Miguel.
Miguel.
yeah,
Miguel.
when he lands on the bridge and it's the light bridge and he's seeing all the spirits, like he's seeing the spirit world.
Yeah.
That was the teaser, and I remember being like, I don't know what this movie is, but I'm going to see it. That looks gorgeous. That looks good.
Yeah, and those are
Going to
marigolds.
see it.
Marigolds, which is prominent and for the Day of the Dead, and they're beautiful. They're bright orange and they're yellow and they're reds, and it's just like so much color. And in animated films, we get to have that, but in like TV and movies, sometimes it's like you just dulled all the colors, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
America.
Well, it's because they don't.
I mean, you're not wrong.
They don't know and they don't think about it.
Yeah.
They're like, it's not. It doesn't even just when we watched the Ruth Carter thing. When she was talking about her design for Black Panther.
Oh yeah.
For the costume, how like when it was up to the white people, they made it just a standard all black costume, and she was like, "That's boring. Like it's African culture. Where's the color?
Yeah.
Where's the
texture?
Where's the texture? Where's the accents? Like there's so much more to it than that."
Yeah, I agree. There's you just get a little more from animated films, I feel like sometimes, and that's why people always recommend like, hey, go watch this to this instead of like this. And even though this is more serious and this is more prominent, you'll get more information. You don't get to see certain things,
Exactly. As you were talking about the color, it actually reminds me of one of the shows I wanted to recommend. It's on Netflix called The House of Flowers. Have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. It's like a Mexican soap opera, or not. It's a novela, but with an American kind of twist to it. I feel like it's very geared towards maybe like first gens in a sense, where it has that drama of a telenovela, but it's also very
like a little bit like Jane the Virgin.
Kind of, and it's really, really funny. It's mostly in Spanish, but it has a lot of. It's really, I think it's really well done, and it's really funny, and I think it's worth the show. And they have a lot of color in there because it is based in Mexico. There's a lot of color in it too. They live in a flower house, so like the houses are colorful, the dresses are colorful, and it's just more vibrant. Yeah, but it's hilarious, so definitely recommend.
And a couple book recommendations. Mexican Gothic, if you've ever read that, that's super good. And I just read it too, and I just reviewed it with Jonathan, and now I can't remember the name. Hacienda. The Hacienda.
Okay.
That is also a good book by Isabella Cañas. It is her first debut book.
Okay.
We did a review on it recently, the last one, and it's set right after one of the Mexican revolutions, or when the Mexican culture, when the Mexico gained independence from Spain at first, and they actually tried, which I didn't know this, they actually tried going to an imperialism. And it lasted for about a year and a half, and then they're like, no, and then they had another like little war thing, where they disposed of the king or the emperor, and then they're like, yeah, we're not doing that. We're gonna do presidents now. So, that is also a good book. So there are some good books that actually portray the Mexican culture really beautifully, really well, and in detailed, and they're written by Mexican women, so it's like a good connection. Isabella Cañas, I believe, is Mexican Canadian actually, but it's still so well done, and it's very informative too, which I always enjoy.
Nice.
Well, there's Roma.
Yeah, if you want to watch a Mexican Oscar movie, it's called it's Roma. It's directed by Alfonso Cuarón. Shot beautifully, but man, is it slow.
It definitely.
It's very slow.
I am most likely not gonna watch it then.
No, honestly, it was really hard for me to watch. I'm glad that I did watch it because it is a really good plot, and the way that it's directed, and it's just a really good movie, so I can see why it won and stuff. But yeah, it's hard to get into a little bit.
Yeah. If it's slow in the first like 15 minutes, I'm done. My brain clocks out, and it's just like
very slow.
There's this Mexican telenovela actor who I can't remember his name. La Familia Peluche. He was the dad in it. I don't know if you remember that.
Not really.
But he's super well known in Mexico. It's a movie called No hay devoluciones. No returns. It's a really, I believe it's mostly in English.
Oh, that just came out this year, didn't it?
No, actually, because I remember seeing it a couple of years ago. But it's basically about this guy who finds out he has a kid, and I don't remember the storyline too much about it, but it just was a really cute movie, and I really liked that the main character is Mexican.
Yeah.
And then there's a movie, I don't remember where it's you can find it, but it's called Half Brothers, and it's this guy who is Mexican, and he ends up finding has a half brother and who is a white guy, and they end up like fighting and bickering and all these things, but they end up having to go on this adventure together or something to find their dad, or what happened to their dad or something together. Yeah. It's a comedy movie. It was just really cute.
I've heard of it. I think
it's just cute to watch.
Yeah,
but
I'll take a look into that then.
Yeah. And Zorro. Have you seen that one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that one I really like because it's one of those movies that also crossed into mainstream media, and it's just one of those. I don't know, it's just a good one to always watch.
I haven't seen it in so long, so I don't recall if it's good or not. I remember liking it at the time and enjoying it, but I can't say too much on it now. It's been so long. God, I think it's been over 10. It's been over 10 years. It's been a while.
Really long
so
time
since
yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen Zorro.
Yeah. There's another movie called The Mission. That one I like because it's based in San Francisco, where I'm from, the Bay Area, and it starts off by portraying. It shows a whole bunch of murals. So if you're ever in San Francisco, they have like on the Mission area, they have a whole bunch of murals that are very Latin inspired, and so it's a really nice touristy thing, I guess you can always go see. But they starts off with that scene of just showing a whole bunch of murals. But anyways, and it's very colorful too. But it's basically the ways that I wanted to kind of talk about it is because it's the representation in it. They have a lot of stereotypical things in terms of the way that they act and dress, but it's showing these characters that are literally just trying to live their life, and that's just
you're right there, man.
I'm fine. Just hit my elbow.
Yeah, I see. I saw that. We all saw that. We all heard it too.
Go on, continue. I'm sorry.
And true ADHD fashion, I was watching it before I got here, so like I was writing things about it. I was like, oh, this is, like, I forgot how good it was of a movie. But it's basically a relationship between a dad and a son. The son ends up being gay, and so there's a lot of like the homophobia that goes into it as well, in just typical common Latin cultures.
Yeah,
the homophobia that exists, but also showing the guy who he has a neighbor upstairs who he brings groceries to all the time. So like a lot of family oriented stuff that's very prominent in a lot of Latin cultures. But no, it's just a nice little movie to sit back and watch.
Yeah.
Nice.
So those are some good recommendations.
Yeah. And then Guillermo del Toro, he does a lot of horror movies. The Orphanage.
Yes.
The Orphanage was one of them.
I like Pan's Labyrinth is probably the one I like a lot. And
is Pan's Labyrinth considered a horror film or no?
It's not a horror. It's considered dark fantasy.
Okay.
And that, which is mostly his genre.
Yeah.
He loves good dark fantasy stuff. Because Shape of Water is the same thing, where it's considered like a dark fantasy.
I tried watching that.
That one
5 minutes in, it's already weird as fuck.
That one is very much a like clearly a horror movie, or not a horror movie. Sorry, Oscar movie. Like it's trying when there's the scene when her and him are just dancing on the stage. I was like, there's no reason for this to be in the movie, but it's clearly to be like creative and weird and interesting. I just remember that like that was the movie that every person was just like, have you seen the movie about the girl who fucks the fish man?
Yeah,
I was just like, I hate that this is the descriptor you've given me for this movie.
It's not entirely wrong.
It's not wrong. No, that happens. It's just the fact of like that's the takeaway, not the movie about the fish man who's trapped in a lab. It's like, no, you're stuck on the sex part.
I mean, honestly, like, I was talking to a friend about Shape of Water, and they said there's a book that's worse. It's worse. Like, it's a story about a woman who falls in love with, like, a fish man, a lot like Shape of Water, but, like, there's a graphic, detailed scene in the book of them having sex, and it's like, once you read it, it's there in your head forever. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to read it. They're like, but you should take a look at it. I'm like, absolutely not. I couldn't even watch 5 minutes of Shape of Water. Why on earth would I do that?
What's popping on my head is that South Park thing, like fish sticks? Fish sticks?
Oh, yeah.
That just keeps popping up in my head right now.
Fish sticks?
You know what? That's actually probably a really good show to watch with stereotypical anything.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, but the only thing I'll give South Park is that nobody is safe. Everybody gets hit. Like, it's
Everyone.
black, white, Hispanic, Canadian, European, don't matter. If you're a person on this planet, you will get made fun of in some way, shape, or form.
I think I've only watched like 2 episodes of South Park.
Really?
One was the Scientology episode. My favorite thing about that whole episode was when they were describing Scientology. At the bottom, they put a disclaimer saying, "This is really what they believe. We are not making this up. This is what they're believing. We are showing you what they're like." There's straight up like multiple disclaimers, and the one where they call themselves out or call the characters out for calling the black guy Token. The only black character on the show, and they're like, "Oh, it's Token," and they're like, "That's not his real name." You think a parent would name their child Token? A black child Token? Like, no, that's not his name at all. And so, like, those are really the only 2 episodes I watched. I'm sure I've watched other ones that are just like in the background of my brain.
There's actually this scene. You know how, like, in classrooms you would see the alphabet like A, B, C, or uppercase, lowercase. I remember it was in Spanish. "Oh no, matamos a Kenny," or something along the lines of basically, "Oh no, Kenny's dead."
Yeah,
and it was in Spanish and it was not in shape before. That's
my favorite South Park thing is you ever play the video games?
No.
Like Fractured But Whole or
I don't even watch the show.
The Stick It. in the video game, you can make your own character. You play as your own character, and then you're hanging out with the South Park kids.
Yeah.
But it's like a theme. Like the first one is the Stick of Truth. That one is themed like more like fantasy.
Yeah.
And the kids are playing like wizards and magic and stuff. The second one is the Fractured Butthole, which is a pun, but it's all superheroes, and the kids are now playing superheroes. But when you make your character, the darker your skin tone, it's like when it says like choose your difficulty, on the hard scale is like black, and the easy is completely white. It doesn't affect actual difficulty in the game. It's just a joke. But I just love that. I'm like, that is funny.
It's like, you're not wrong, but
and I'm just like, that's funny. Yeah, darker skin tone, yeah, makes it a little more difficult to live in this country. That's for sure.
Yeah, which comes back to our name, the first ones to die. I mean, like, I think we were talking one day, be like, well, we're all minorities, so we'd probably die first, but like, you're a little darker than me, so I'd be at least safe till the next victim. Then we have our other host, Jonathan, who's a little bit darker than him, so it's like, all right, he would probably go, but he's also like the really nice one, so like, we're still betting you die first.
No
offense.
I'll live forever.
I feel like I would be able to get away with at least not dying until halfway. I feel like I would be able to survive a little bit, and then I do something to like be like, you're dead now.
Goofy friend lives a long time. That's me. So I'll be around for a while. Listen,
you're like the second or third one to die then, which is why it comes down to the like the first one to die, who would die. I'd probably die first, honestly. I wander off a lot on my own, and I don't tell people where I'm going.
If it's any consolation, you weren't the first to die in our roleplay game that we did.
No, but that was we
a lot of episodes back. Look that up.
Our friends kept giving me shit because I wasn't helping anybody in the game while they were all fighting the monster. I was like, fine, I'll come help, and then I immediately die, and that was BS.
Okay, randomly, quick question: what would happen? What would you guys do if there was a zombie apocalypse?
I'm staying inside. I'm waiting for like the initial like first wave of people to die. And then like I'm waiting for when it hits that point where the streets are just abandoned.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, all right, now it's safe to go out because there's less people to get in my way to cause me to get into issues with zombies.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's like hordes.
Yeah, but I mean, not on the highway. In every zombie apocalypse, the highway is always completely clear for some reason.
I think I'd fight through a zombie apocalypse, but if do you watch The Walking Dead at all?
I stopped watching, I think, shortly after what's his face died.
Rick.
No, before that.
Oh, before
even before Carl. Even before Carl.
Oh.
I stopped watching, but I'm familiar.
Well, I think I'd probably.
Is it
if I could keep
Glenn?
Glenn.
Yeah.
Glenn.
I'm about to say, because I'm like, you're hitting the important ones. The only
I was
other
like,
last one is
I was like,
Dan.
how, like, in
A
between.
little bit after that is when I stopped watching.
Yeah.
Which
that's
is
what-
funny because the book had already come out before. I remember when that episode came out, and everyone was like, "Who's gonna die?" And I'm like, "Y'all ain't ready.
The thing is,
Y'all don't
they
know."
cheapened his death by killing Abraham first.
Well,
I was
they
so
were
pissed
trying
about
to
that. Throw people off.
throw people
I understand
off.
that, but I was like, this is bullshit. This is Glenn's death. I'd be cool fighting in the zombie apocalypse and like doing that. But if it's like I gotta stay put and rebuild the whole civilization, I'm not doing that. Like I'm gonna tap out. All right, I'm not dealing with all these new rules and new hierarchies and probably still the same
Yeah, but you
hierarchy.
can define, like Walking Dead proved that entirely, at least the comic especially, where it's like they run into different civilizations, all of them running completely differently than the last.
Still controlled by a white man.
That's only because nobody stood up to them, all right? I feel like if all the minorities teamed up together in the zombie apocalypse, we could easily make that not a thing.
That's fair. Fair point.
I feel like I'm a little overly excited to be fighting zombies.
No, I'd be down for that.
Also,
Alright.
I think the governor in the comics is actually Hispanic. He's not white.
Really?
I don't. I read.
Well, I think
the
because
comics were so long ago
in
now.
the comics, whenever you would see that character in color, like on the covers, he was always had brown skin. He didn't have white skin.
I know they made him nicer in the show because they can.
Yeah, they had to. In
Yeah.
the comics, he's terrible. He's
Yeah,
even
he's-
worse than he is in the show.
Yeah, he is. But like, I would be more for the fighting and like probably because me and my sister are big on zombies.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about who would do what, and I would definitely be like a runner if we establish in a town being going out and getting stuff and like fighting. So I would not be able to be the one establishing the new world. I'd be like everybody else can do that. I want to go fight a zombie and I'll go pick up breakfast. Don't make me like sit through like meetings and shit and talk about everything. I can't do that. Can't do that now.
I have a few recommendations. First of all, Penny Dreadful, City of Angels.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. It's a hard watch. So I just know that up front. It's not easy to get through, but if you can do it, it's good. In my opinion. Then there's if you can find it, El Tigre. It's really funny, really fun to watch.
YouTube. You can always find things.
Yeah. Classics, of course. Once Upon a Time in Mexico and Desperado. Watch those two movies. They're fantastic.
I would actually recommend Casa de Padre. Like I don't want to, but it's a funny film. I'll give credit to Will Ferrell, like speaking in Spanish the whole time. Certain parts get like offensive, but like it is still such a funny movie, and I still enjoy it. I will enjoy it if I watch it again, and I know will. And I've seen it on HBO Max, so it is streaming there.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you guys are curious, I'd watch it there and be like, just you remember that they are doing a lot of stereotypes, but it's just one of those films that are like, all right, you get a pass. It's funny enough. I'll give you that. It's like Speedy Gonzalez.
Watch Undone on Amazon Prime.
Oh, that is such a good show.
It's got a lot of great representation. It's about Rosa Salazar's character is biracial, so Bob Odenkirk is kind of like the main person she hangs out with, but her mom also plays a big factor, and her Mexican culture plays a big factor.
So have
especially
you heard
in the
of
second
Undone?
season.
No.
Undone is well, like you said, they're half Mexican, but the mom is full Mexican. It's about a woman who can kind of travel through time and space almost using her mind. She's finding out the truth about her, father, because he died when she was younger, and kind of he was a scientist and kind of what he was actually involved in around his death and stuff. And he's right, a beautiful representation of not only Mexican culture but Native American culture and the ties between that, about how like this is where we originally came from before we got influenced by Catholics, and why it goes back to all this, and like how basically we were once so connected to the earth that and what was around us, that we could not necessarily manipulate time but see through it almost and remember who we were, and kind of going back to this almost magical base. I haven't gotten to the 2 seasons are out.
The second season is a lot more diving into Mexican culture.
Yeah,
than
and
the
I
first.
have not watched it. I keep meaning to, but the first season, and it's in that comic book style.
Okay.
Draw-
It's
Drawn?
more like this one's less so comic book like Spider-Verse, more like paint. So it's the same type of
Yeah, it's
animation idea, but instead it's more
Yeah.
painterly.
Anything, definitely try to watch Undone because it's on Amazon Prime. It's so good, and it respectfully goes into Mexican and Native American culture, which is a rare thing you will see in like shows and movies because they'll try to do it,
Yeah.
and then it just gets a little like stereotypic or offensive at times.
Yeah.
But like this is done just amazingly well,
Okay, that sounds really interesting.
and it doesn't get enough attention.
Yeah.
It's actually in the movie they mentioned a little bit about the basically how they're indigenous or Mexica, and they mentioned a little bit about it. There's like I think the grandpa does like a little bit of a prayer that I think is more indigenous than anything. So there's a little bit of a mention on that. So I was like, oh ding ding ding, I want to mention that too. And I can't believe actually the Umbrella Academy. Diego.
Oh, with Diego.
With
yeah.
Diego. They're just he's there. He's there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the problem is that Diego at this point has been so sidelined, like especially this most recent season where he has a story, but it's not really like that integral to the plot. It's fun, but it's just not like that important.
Dang.
And I'm like, it's kind of weird because I'm like Diego, but I get it. It's because they're making it up as they go, and the same thing with the J.K. Rowling thing. Gerard Way, when he wrote Umbrella Academy, all the characters are white. So
Yeah.
none of the like so all this cultural stuff is new. They're making it up. So it's a lot hard for them to like put it in when they don't really have anything to work off of. And I don't think they have a lot of people of color working behind the scenes to write the story either. So
Yeah, I love when you can just tell that like you didn't involve anybody of any type of color, did you, in doing this project? And it's just so clear and so like anybody, like you could have gotten somebody even of a totally different race to involve in this because at least people of color understand other people of color issues. Like there is a baseline. It's like no, you didn't do that. you this was a solid like white project, and so many things could have been fixed before this, and then they get critics and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, we were just trying." No, you were not trying to.
Line also Sense8, great representation of
a lot of things.
Of a lot of things.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
but especially Latin representation.
Yeah.
And gay Latin representation at that.
Yeah.
So really cool. Love that show.
I actually can't believe I didn't write that because I that's one of my happy shows that I just have playing in the background.
Yeah.
I was really disappointed when they canceled it, but
which that one is the one I will give Netflix. I'm like, it makes sense. You were filming in 8 continents.
Yeah, they
like,
but it was so
it's expensive.
Yeah, no, but it was a good show, and yeah, it was actually just a great representation of a lot of one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but like gay Latin, which we don't get often.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially from the perspective of him being a novella action star.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
like
when he's the main character, when he's supposed to be super macho and like sex symbol kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's a great recommendation.
Also, Leo's one of my favorite characters, just in general, but in Sense8 especially. He is one of my favorites.
He's so dramatic, and I love it.
He is. He's so dramatic and sassy, and
because one of the stereotypes that do borderline on true is that Latin people can be dramatic at times. Unfortunately,
gasp in Spanish.
Yeah, I was like, unfortunately, that is a stereotype that borderlines on like, okay, there's a reason why our novellas are so good and why we can connect with them. I'm just saying, but like, yeah.
Last few is Machete, like all the Machetes. They're just fun to watch. They're fun Mexican action
Danny
movies.
Trejo, I love Danny Trejo.
Yeah.
I have a weird love for him.
And this show isn't out yet, but when it comes out, just because we were talking about people of Latin descent in Star Wars, Cassian's getting his own show. Captain Andor is getting his own show with Diego Luna. So watch it when it comes out. So I'm excited for that.
I was gonna say shit about Star Wars, but I don't think we have enough time for me to do that. Any last recommendations or anything you think
Not that my brain can think of. Probably as soon as we are cut, yes, but right now, no.
Well, if you like, you can always let us know, and then we can always add something if you're like, hey, this feels like kind of important.
I feel like you guys mentioned like a really good amount, and as I consider myself like a movie person, but not that big of a movie person, I guess.
Like we spent 8 hours in a basement with all each other, so like we introduced each other to different movies. Be like, hey, you have to watch this. We're gonna watch it like right now.
But comment below. Tell us what are your recommendations for movies or TV shows with great Latin representation or stuff that you enjoy watching. We're going to get into some socials real quick. So, Alex, I'll let you start.
I am Alex and Nobody on Instagram and on TikTok, where it's just basically me and my cat, Cheddar. And then I handle the social media account for The First Ones to Die on TikTok, where I post clips of this episode, possible future episodes. And I just recently went through our older ones, so you'll get a little more content. And I'm excited to share that. What about you?
You can find me at Not Jerome Rhett on Instagram.
RoboZoom Media.
Well, I was thinking I had other places, but yeah, you're right. It's all on Instagram. So yeah, at Not Jerome Red on Instagram, as well as at RoboZoom Media and at Jerome_the_show to find me on any other projects I've been working on. And you can follow us on The First Ones to Die on all our social medias and on our, streaming sites where you can listen to our podcast, stuff like Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, that sort of thing. And also, if you want to find all types of special content that you can only get exclusively, stuff like video versions of our podcast, gaming videos, mini reviews, book reviews, all that good stuff, going over to the YouTube channel at The First Ones to Die, and you can follow us there to find all that good stuff. And Monica, where can people find you?
Hello. Personal, I have Instagram. Who the hell is Monica? I don't know. My TikTok is Who the hell is Mon, and then for the podcast, my TikTok is kind of personal, but also about the podcast. There's also Cafe with Strangers for Instagram. Yeah.
Do you know when the next episode of Cafe with Strangers is coming out? Or
honestly, I'm trying to do it within yesterday.
Understood.
I need to finish one up, so hopefully this week. But until I can get into a little bit of a groove, to be determined.
Yeah, so start watching or listening to that. Since you are just starting out, that's always a nice place, I feel like, because then you can see how podcasts develop and how they grow, and see like, hey, I was there from the beginning. So like, definitely, starting out with somebody who's adjusting to their own groove is like, I always think is a great experience. So I'm excited to listen to a few episodes. I didn't get the chance before this, but I'm definitely going to listen to some because it's always nice to share experiences with people.
It really is. Yeah, there's currently 5 episodes, but I'm really, really excited because there's one that's coming up about a friend of mine that we did stoned because he's a major stoner, and I was like, we did, and I'm like, I don't know why I mentioned that. I think it's the ADHD, man.
I mean, I'm cool with weed, and I'm the only one here though. But like, I'm cool with that. Yeah. So go check Monica out, and thank you for joining us.
No,
we
thanks
appreciate
for having
it.
me.
Thanks. You've been great.
Yeah.
No, it's great listening to you guys. You guys are funny. My cheeks are hurting a little bit.
Yeah. Like, thank you for all the recommendations. I'm excited to see more and hopefully get a little more exposure to Latin culture.
Me too.
So.
Yep. And following up with Monica as our guest, actually, if you would like to be a guest on our podcast, for whether that be digital or in person, email us at thefirstones2die@gmail.com. Few caveats to know. Firstly, we ask that if you are out of state, that you do have that state being Washington, that you do have your own recording equipment and things, so you can record your own voice at your location over Zoom. If you are within the state of Washington, just email us. Let us know if you're capable of traveling to meet us in person. If not, we can do it over Zoom. But again, same caveats apply if you are going to do it over Zoom. So shoot us that email or DM us on any of our social medias, and we will try to get back to you as soon as we can.
Thank you for watching. Have a good day.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.